Hey everyone, Kate with the Antique Book Collective, and today I'm getting to you guys with a little bit of a news update and how that affects us and our eBay businesses, and particularly with antique book businesses or book businesses, which is what my expertise and speciality is. So with that said, this update, again guys, it's not going to be all great news, and what this is sort of like a state of the economy sort of address. So before I get into the entire how that affects us and our eBay businesses, our used items, eBay businesses in particular, I want to just establish what we're looking at with the economy. And I'm doing this video a little bit later than what I wanted to do. I wanted to make this video back on Monday, so a lot of the figures that I did with all my research are a little bit outdated. So I know it's only been like 6 days since Monday, but a lot has happened. So with that said, I just wanted to say one of the things that has changed. So one of the big things is on Monday, we had just finished out 7 down weeks on the major stock indexes or indices, depending on how you want to pronounce that. And that 7 down weeks in a row has not happened consecutively since I got on my notes here. I've got it here and it says, first time in 11 years. So 11 years was back in the Great Recession, and that was the last time that we had that many consecutive down weeks. And we just finished out, this past Friday, we just finished out yet another week that was down, which is, again, guys, something that you have not seen for 11 years. That's over a decade, and that is a lot of the times a really good indicator of a slowdown in the economy. Of course, I'm not a big financial advisor sort of dude. I just like to keep an eye on the markets and do all that sort of stuff. So I recommend you guys do that as well, but all my stuff that I'm going to be talking about is just what I'm doing. I'm not your investment advisor. So just with that said. So next thing up, with that decline in the stock market over those past few weeks, that represents about $7.6 trillion down from the top, according to another research thing that I saw. And that was back on Monday, 7.6 trillion, which is the highest decline in valuations ever, like including the Great Depression, including the recession, including the dot-com bubble and the 80s, all those. So this is the biggest decline in dollar value ever as well, which is pretty crazy. Next up is inflation. It is of course way up. I'm sure you guys have been hearing a lot about inflation. I've been hearing a lot about inflation, and there are people that like to just listen to the government statistics, which say it's like 8.3 or whatever it is, which is down from last month, which is so good. And then there's other people that are like a little more skeptical of the government because they've read history and they know history, and they're like, governments tend to lie a lot. So they like to do that, and they know that the government has changed the figures and how they measure inflation. So they like to go off of the old numbers, which is kept track of on something called shadow stats. So you guys can check out shadow stats. That shows what people say is the real inflation rate. Some people would say it's even higher than that, all that sort of stuff. For me, I like to gauge on a bunch of different things. I like to listen to a whole bunch of different people to figure out what they think's going on, and then sort of piece together my own sort of thing, because at the end of the day, I'm a business person and I'm my own individual person. So I like to sort of get what's going on from a few different people to make sure that I know what is going on the best. So next up is unemployment is potentially at Great Depression levels. Government really fudges the numbers on that as well. So not just inflation, but they fudge the numbers on unemployment as well. They changed the numbers to say it's only like if you've been unemployed for like less than 6 months, you still count as unemployed. Once you have been unemployed for over 6 months, you no longer count on their main report that they do, which is something that people say is very dishonest, all that sort of stuff. For me, I'm like, they can say whatever they want. I just go off of what I see also, in addition to what they say and what other people are saying and all the other data statistics you can look at. And a lot of people are saying that unemployment levels are like past Great Depression levels and that all these things. And you have the Great Resignation going on and all these things. And it's a big economic, crazy show going on. So with all that said and done, next part is up. So GDP. So GDP is officially down for the first quarter. When you have a official recession declared, it has to be down for 2 quarters in a row. So we just finished out our first quarter that was down, and if we finish out this current quarter that we're in right now and GDP is down again, then we are actually in an official recession. But there are people who are saying, well, we are actually in a depression right now, we're actually in a recession, all these sort of things. And they say that the only reason why we aren't seeing that in actual numbers is because they printed all this money, and all the printed money just paved over the recession, but it didn't actually change what happened, all that sort of stuff. I'm not diving into that because, again, I'm not a big economist dude. If you guys want to learn more about that, I'll mention some other channels at the end of the video that I like to watch and that you guys might want to check out. And finally, with all that said, on to the next little section I wanted to talk about for economic stuff, and there is talk of a greater depression. Instead of Great Depression, it's greater depression. Another talks about just greater recessions, or just normal recessions, normal depressions, all that sort of stuff. There's a lot of talk about that in the news and everywhere else, and there's a lot of economists that have been saying this sort of thing is going to happen for a little while now. So that's something that I just wanted to preface this entire video with is, listen guys, we are getting into some potentially very bad economic times. But another thing that is less depressing is what a lot of people say, a lot of economists, a lot of business people, is they all mention that most millionaires were made in all of history. Most of them were made during the Great Depression. And if you adjust for inflation, all that sort of stuff, those millionaires back then are probably billionaires today because of inflation. So a lot of people made a whole lot of money when times were really bad because as a Warren Buffett quote goes, when there's blood in the streets, then is the time to really like start grabbing stuff and making all the money you can, because that is when people are least apt to be thinking ahead for the future. They're thinking about just today, and when everyone's thinking for today, they are missing out on opportunities for the future, which means that if you guys can keep a level head, you can really capitalize on this. And I know it sounds bad to capitalize on a bad situation, but at the end of the day, just because everyone else is hurting doesn't mean that you have to hurt too. You can choose to make the most of it, and when you choose to make the most of it, you become sort of like that solid rock foundation that all your friends that are suffering can go back to and focus on, and potentially you can help them out of some of the bad situations that they are getting into. So that's something that's really nice about when you can keep a level head, is you can actually end up helping more people in the long run. And if you look at the entire way that the economy works, when you have someone really take off and make a great business and make millions of dollars, that lifts up everyone else around them, guys. That's sort of how capitalism works. Capitalism was made to build up communities, civilizations, and it was made to basically just help the lowest class people and everyone else rise up to different better standards. And that is the entire thing of capitalism. If you guys haven't read the entire book, I highly recommend reading the very first book on capitalism, where it was entirely laid out. So that was Adam Smith, I believe it was. So be sure to check that one out too if you guys want to learn more about that and the entire amazing things that capitalism can do, and that just an original thing, and that's sort of what started America. A lot of the founders read that book and founded America around that book, actually, which just shows how enlightened of a book that was and how it really could help people. And as you guys have seen over the past few centuries, about 80% of people have been lifted out of the poverty line, where they couldn't even get food. Now they can get food. I know it's not always the best food, but they can actually get fed and not die of starvation as often. And now we're like sitting pretty nice. I mean, of course, there's still a little bit of wiggle room that people can be helped with, but capitalism has helped us a whole lot. So with all that said, I know that's a little bit of a spiel for capitalism, but with all that said, guys, we really just need to learn how to keep a level head through all the worst things that can happen. And with all that said, now on to the part that actually applies to our book businesses or our used businesses, all those things on eBay. So right off the bat, I don't have actual statistics for this. This is just stuff that I have read in passing and all these sort of things. I've seen figures in the past, but I can't remember any of them whatsoever for this video, because all the research that I did was basically just for the economic side of things. But historically, whenever you have big recessions, big depressions, all that sort of stuff happen, you have several things happen. On the one hand, you have, like, let's say supply of everything is around here. So I'm talking like cars, I'm talking new clothes, everything, like all stuff made brand new, manufacturing. You have it like up here, and then the depression hits and it takes a really hard nosedive, because not saying there's less supply, but there's less demand of these things, which means that supply is a lot higher than what everyone is asking for, which means that there is a lot of stuff in this range here that is potentially way undervalued right now, because it might be worth $100, but because no one's buying it, they might be trying to sell it for $10, which means that's a good arbitrage opportunity for you. And arbitrage is when you buy it somewhere and try to sell it somewhere else, that sort of thing. And basically, if you can act in that first little bit, and if it doesn't go down further, which is a big thing that you guys do have to worry about, but if you can get it in that first little bit, then there's a lot of money to be made. And that is something that people have done in the past quite a few times. It's something that I'm preparing to do and have actually started doing on a couple different assets that I've been building up myself. Nothing for my eBay business just yet, but I am gearing up to potentially get some more books for my eBay business, because again, guys, I basically only do books on eBay. So I'm working on seeing if I can get any more area. If there's a big sale on books, I might score all the books I can. So with that said about normal stuff, so it'll take the nosedive of supply, but then eventually people will get to the point where they do have to buy it again. And if you look at all the graphs, it takes a crash and then it slowly works its way back up. So eventually there's more demand, less supply for all the demand. You guys know all the supply demand curves. So that is something that sort of has to play in. And I know that I'm not doing this in the most organized fashion. I'm just basically trying to spew as much information at you guys as I can right now. So with all that said, so when all the new supply gets down here, the manufacturers, a lot of them will do layoffs, all these sort of things. And when it's down here, there's going to be less supply being made. And when there's less supply being made, and when everything from that big supply glut dies out, you're going to have less supply overall. And that is when something really cool happens for us with our eBay businesses for used things. When you have that happen, people start buying used items a whole lot more. And not only that, when there is all of that and everything's lower price, oftentimes used things are still a lower price than that. And yes, we will take a big old haircut off the top if we do have a crash. And if that happens, yes, our businesses will be affected. But if we are selling used items, there is a good chance that our sales will go up still. So yeah, you might not make as much money per item, but your sales might be able to increase and potentially offset that. Not guaranteed whatsoever. It really depends on your niche and how you do your business and your margins and all that sort of stuff. But that is something that is potentially something you can play with. So what happens a lot in these recessions is at the bottom, and even in depressions. In the Great Depression, they talk about this a lot. But at the bottom, a lot of people are buying used items. And again, that works really well for us. And for me, I am a book salesman, a book broker, if you will. So, sorry, I like the, what's the word when it starts with the same letter? I don't know, doesn't matter. But I like to sell books. That's my thing. I like books a lot. I like reading books. And something really cool is when you have times of upheaval, times of struggle, times of market crashes, all these sorts of things, when all that happens, a lot of people actually start reading more books. So some people start reading books to try to make a better future for themselves. So they'll be reading nonfiction books on, well, what did Sally Mae do on this one crash that made her a millionaire? Other people are like, I want to read this book on how to invest in this. Other people are like, okay, I just lost my job. I want to learn how to be a doctor. I want to learn how to do this. I want to learn how to do that. Other people, a lot of people, they start buying up all the fiction books they can because they're like, reality stinks right now. I'm going to try to escape reality by reading these books. So when all that happens, book sales actually go up. And historically, you actually do see book sales go up a lot during recessions, which is really nice for people like me who sell books, because that means I get to ride that basically little roller coaster up to the top during the worst times when everything's going down. And I know it's not a direct correlation. So like, let's say the crash is here, the rise of books might be, so it might be over like here. So I will feel a little bit of a hurt at the very beginning, but eventually people will start buying the books. So that is something that has happened historically. And of course, my little hand graph is not the most accurate thing that we can go off for investing, but that is something that is definitely worth researching for you guys. So if you guys are not in books, maybe you should get into books. And if you are in something else for your eBay business, or any business in general, let's be honest, I highly recommend, guys, looking up all the historical data that you can. Like, I am literally saying, spend this weekend on the internet, guys. Like, be looking up everything, like what happens with my niche of my industry every single time that there's a recession, every time that there's a this, there's a this, there's a this. It's something that really helps you prepare for your own business. So then you can be looking at the news headlines and you're like, oh, I see that this is happening here, and according to history, when that happens over there, that helps my business here. And you can basically, you guys know the conspiracy theory like charts, you know, where it's like you got all the yarn going between all the pictures. You can sort of do that for your own business, and it really helps you in the long run. And that's sort of basically what I've been doing, except without the conspiracy theory chart. But it's something that I do track. It's something I try to make a good effort of tracking, is to make sure that I know what's going on with everything so that I can make the most for my business and for myself. And all that is so I can help as many people as I can in the future and even today. So with all that said, into the next little bit. So what can you guys do with your businesses? So again, guys, once you get to the bottom, people will not be willing to spend as much money. So a lot of us will have to cut our prices. So like if you're asking for a lot of money for something, you might have to cut your price by like 90%. A lot of people are saying this crash might hit as much as like 90% or like 70%, somewhere between 70 and 90 crash, like off of like the stocks, off of like everything. And when that happens, that's a lot less money that people have kicking around to be able to buy things, which means that we probably will have to lower our prices. And that also means that you might have to take a loss on some items if you guys are going to do that. There's a big complicated theory on how that isn't actually a loss in the long run. If you lower your prices, it's really complicated, and it has to do with market cycles, all that sort of stuff. It's, again, really complicated. I'm not getting into that in this video, but that's something you guys can research on your own. But if you take a loss right now, you'll have that money in hand so you can reinvest in other things at the bottom of the market. And if you do that at the bottom of the market, when it rises back up, you have a chance to really multiply your thing. So that's a little bit I'm going on that. So on to the next thing though. So I know I already mentioned lower prices for the high tier things, but you also have to do that for the low things. But with the high tier item thing, there's a big caveat that I do want to say, guys. Those high ticket items, those collectible items, those are some of the heaviest hit things during any market correction, which is what they call a crash, or, well, actually they call it a crash. Crash correction is not quite as bad as a crash. But whenever you have downturns, collectible items always take like the biggest hits on things. So a lot of people, they either sell their collectibles at a huge loss, or they hang on to their collectibles for it to rise back in value. And if you can buy collectibles at a huge at a huge discount on a huge sale at the bottom of the market, you can buy those collectibles and sell them potentially for a whole lot more in the future, but you have to hang on to those for several years. If you look at history, you can see about how long each recession or depression takes to take back all of its losses. It's a really complex thing, but it's something you guys can definitely do research on. And with all that said, that's the buying opportunity, but the selling opportunity is you guys can either drop your prices on your very expensive collectibles on your eBay stores or whatever other store you have. You can sell them at a huge discount. You can leave them listed for that huge premium and, like, say $10,000. You can leave it there and there's a good chance someone won't buy it over the recession, but in the future someone might buy it for that $10,000 and you're just going to have to hang on to it for a few more years. So with all that said and done, though, I know this is a very convoluted, crazy sort of show going on that I just made. I know that I mentioned a whole lot of different things, and honestly, guys, I'm not really here to tell you guys everything about everything on the economy and all these sorts of things, because again, I'm not like the biggest economist in the world. I'm just someone that researches it in my spare time to make sure my business endeavors are doing as good as I can and make sure that I can pivot as good as I can. I'm actually working on a huge pivot right now, which I'll maybe mention in another video. But there is a lot that you guys can do and should do in your different businesses. But at the end of the day, you guys have to do your own research for it, because every single business does its own cycle and its own little weird waves, and you have the big crash and then some things go up, all those sorts of things. For me, I'm very excited that I'm in books, because books do see the increase of sales during the downturns. So that is up, and then I have all my other businesses that might go down here, but the other ones will go up. So it's really nice because you can make sure that you only are going like this instead of like this, which is sort of like the feast famine video that I made a couple days ago. I highly recommend looking at several different economists and a few different clothing sellers, their YouTubes potentially on YouTube. There's actually one that I follow, Daily Refinement, who just got, because he had a and for eBay, because he had a really big sale store going, and he really has a good channel too. If you guys do clothing or other things, he has good eBay content for you guys. If you guys want to learn more about the economy in general, there are a lot of different schools of thought for the economy. Some people are modern monetary theory, that's what they call it, and they say that you can print money however much you want and it won't do anything. And cough cough, we all saw how that worked. Now we have major inflation. There's other people that are Keynesians. They say you can print as much money if you need the money, which again, cough cough, we saw how that worked. And then there's other people that are Austrian economics people, which is a more historical, people say it's outdated school of thought, which says, hey, you can't print money. Money needs to be like actually something, or else you're going to have huge inflation. It's going to ruin everything, which cough cough might be what we're seeing right now. And that's more the school of thought that I agree with. But I do listen to the other schools of thought, because those other schools of thought are actually the people in control a lot of the time. So what they say oftentimes does end up happening because they're in charge. But in the long run, we are seeing, and we have seen historically, that the Austrian school of economics thought is what normally ends up reigning true. So that's what I play for like my long game, but I do prepare for things for the short game, for the Keynesian and modern monetary theory sort of things. And there are other economic theories as well that I like to keep tabs on, is just because I like to make sure that I'm informed, as I told you guys before. And I know all this can be a whole lot to grasp and think about, but it actually isn't. Like, you can like weave this into your normal routines. So with that said, the Austrian School of Economics people that I like to follow, it's not an actual school, but the people that I like to follow that like that mindset, they are Peter Schiff, which he's a little bit extra, guys. Like, he's fun, he's really smart, but he's like very extra on liking gold and hating everything else. He especially hates like cryptocurrencies. Personally, I'm not a fan of cryptocurrencies either, so I sort of like him for that. But he has some really good information, and he's like a really hardcore economist dude. So if you guys want to hear something that's like high level stuff, he's a really good choice to go for. Patrick Bet-David with Valuetainment, so Valuetainment, like as one word, so entertainment and value put together, Valuetainment. So he has a really good channel, Valuetainment, Patrick Bet-David does, and that is for business people, basically. It is for the entrepreneurs, all those sorts of things. So if you guys are following this channel and you have your own eBay businesses or any other sort of business, you should be following him too. He has a YouTube, he has Facebook, he has like all the different social medias, and he talks about all these different economic things going on, all these business things, how it affects you. It's really nice. It's really informational. I follow him. I followed him for years. Really great stuff. And he's a little bit more of an Austrian economics sort of person. He's like, hey, we can't just make stuff up, because if you make stuff up, it doesn't have value. So that's something he thinks as well. And again, guys, his business advice is like bar none. And he has tons and tons and tons and tons of free content on YouTube that you guys can check out. Highly recommend it. And he also has like some random interviews that he does with random people that are really entertaining as well, including mob bosses, which is, again, pretty cool. So another place that I recommend it for you guys to follow, if you guys do like the thought of Austrian economics, is Gold Silver Pros, which is like the channel, Gold Silver Pros, like 3 words, that's the channel name. They're on YouTube, and I really enjoy that channel. They talk a lot about different currencies things. Their entire channel is basically based around like money. They talk about gold and silver, obviously, but they also talk about different commodities like uranium. They talk about a lot. They've talked about copper. They talk about cryptocurrencies, all these sorts of things. I really enjoy that channel as well, so be sure to check them out too. So with all that said and done, guys, those are just the channels that I recommend for the Austrian economics point of view. There are a lot of other channels. I follow a lot of other channels for a whole lot of different things to make sure that I'm informed on all the things that I actually care about. I don't follow mainstream news like at all, because they don't cover like anything I give a rip about 90% of the time. So with all that said and done though, be sure to research everything you can, because if you know enough, and if you like off the top of your head can say all these different things, you can put together all these complex thoughts, and if you can do your little conspiracy theory board, you know, with all your yarn on your back patio or something, just have that set up. I don't know. If you guys can do all that though, you can make sure that you know what's coming on, what's going on, and what potentially will happen, and how you can prepare for it and make the most of it. It's really nice when you guys can really think through these things, and when you can think through it, you can make the most of it and potentially make a lot of money out of it. So with all that said and done, guys, I hope this video helped. I know it's not the normal sort of video that I make, but if you guys want to learn more about book businesses, businesses in general, eBay businesses in general, and occasionally some economic stuff, because I do I play with that a little bit, flirt around with that, there we go, a little bit on this channel. So if you guys would like to do check that out more, subscribe up there, or check out one of my other videos and see how much you like me, and I'll see you guys in the next one.